The alarm on the Kelthie station was screaming before I even opened my eyes. Red light filled the hallway. A voice repeated the same warning in 3 languages, and only one of them was mine. I grabbed my jacket, ran into the corridor, and almost collided with Ambassador Threx, whose 3 eyes were spinning in 3 different directions, which I had learned meant real fear, not just surprise. Silo 4 is failing, Threx said. We have less than a day of grain left in reserve for that sector. 60,000 of my people eat from that silo. If it empties, we do not have a plan for what comes next. I had been on this station for 11 months as the first human liaison to the Kelthie Dominion, and in that time I had watched a civilization that could bend light around a starship fail again and again, against something the size of my thumb. The Vexnari were small, fast, and impossible to predict. They bred every 11 days. They chewed through wiring, through seals, through grain sacks, through every clever trap the Dominion engineers built. Every solution worked for a week, then stopped working, because the Vexnari learned faster than anything had a right to learn. I did not wait for permission. I ran back to my quarters and opened a channel to Earth, straight to my sister Lucy, who picked up on the second ring, half asleep, hair a mess, coffee mug already in her hand out of pure habit. I need Whiskers on the next transport, I said. Today, right now. Lucy blinked at me for a long moment. You are asking me to send my cat into space, she said, to fight aliens. Not fight, I said. Hunt. There is a difference, and I need you to trust me on it. She did not argue long. She never does when it matters. Within 2 hours, a Dominion shuttle was cleared for an emergency return trip to Earth orbit, carrying nothing but an empty crate and a very confused pilot who kept asking me what exactly a cat was and why the Dominion Council had authorized fuel for one. While we waited, I stood with Threx at the edge of Silo 4 and watched the damage for myself. Grain sacks lay open and half empty, their contents scattered across the floor like snow. Small shapes moved along the walls, quick and low, vanishing into gaps before any sensor could lock onto them. The Dominion had tried robotic patrols here first. I could see the remains of one drone in the corner, its access panel chewed through, wires hanging out like something had built a nest inside it, which something had. We tried poison, Threx said quietly. It killed the crop before it killed enough of them. We tried predators from another system. They liked our grain even more than the Vexnari did. We tried machines, and the machines became homes for the very thing we sent them to destroy. I am running out of ideas, and my people are running out of time. I told him about cats, the way you would explain fire to someone who had never seen it. I told him that on Earth, small hunting animals had lived alongside farmers for 10,000 years, not because we trained them to guard grain, but because they wanted to hunt the very creatures that came to steal it. I told him cats do not get tired the way robots break down. They do not need updates. They do not need fuel. They simply do what they were built by nature to do, and they do it better than anything we ever engineered on purpose. Threx listened, all 3 eyes fixed on me now instead of spinning, which told me he wanted very badly to believe me, and was afraid to. The shuttle returned 19 hours later. Lucy had done more than send one cat. She had convinced 3 neighbors, a co-worker, and a woman she met at the pet store to donate their cats for what she called, without a hint of irony, the emergency mission. 12 cats arrived in total, each in their own travel carrier, each one blinking under station lighting that had never shone on an Earth animal before. Whiskers was the first one out. He was an old orange tabby, half asleep even in a brand new starship hallway, stretching like he had just woken up from a nap instead of crossing 11 light years. He looked at Threx. He looked at the 3 spinning eyes. He yawned, long and slow, and then walked straight past the ambassador toward the open door of Silo 4 like he already knew exactly where he needed to be. I will admit, I held my breath. So did every Kelthie in that hallway. This was the whole plan, built on 10,000 years of instinct and absolutely no formal Dominion approval process. If it failed, I did not have a second plan. Whiskers stepped into the silo, sniffed the air once, and went completely still. Then he moved. Not fast, not loud, just low and quiet along the base of the grain sacks. Exactly the way I remembered him stalking a laser pointer across Lucy's living room 100 times before. The other 11 cats followed, spreading out along the walls, finding shadows the Dominion sensors had never flagged as anything worth watching. For the first hour, nothing seemed to happen, and I started to worry. Then one of the Dominion biologists, a nervous young Kaelthi named Ferrix, called me over to a monitor showing the silo's movement sensors. What I saw made my chest tighten in a good way for the first time in 11 months. The Vexnari were not just being hunted, they were running. Their movement patterns, normally calm and confident inside a silo they had controlled for years, had turned into pure panic. They scattered toward exits, toward vents, toward any gap that led away from the silo floor. They have never had a real predator before, Ferrix said, voice shaking with something close to excitement. Their entire evolutionary history has no answer for this. They do not know how to hide from something that hunts the way your cats hunt. Over the following days, I barely slept, and neither did the Kaelthi science team. We watched the numbers fall. Not in a straight line, because nothing about the Vexnari was ever simple, but the trend was clear, and it kept getting better. 14 days in, the population inside Silo 4 had dropped by more than 60%. The cats were not eating every single one, not even close, but they did not have to. Once the Vexnari understood that this particular grain store was no longer safe, many of them simply left on their own, choosing survival over stubbornness in a way that almost every species shares. Threx visited the silo every single day, standing a respectful distance from the cats, watching them the way you would watch a magic trick you still could not fully explain, even after seeing it a dozen times. On day 30, I found him crouched at the edge of the silo floor, 3 eyes locked on Whiskers as the old cat lay stretched out in a patch of light from an overhead vent, utterly unbothered by the historic weight of what he was doing. "He is not even trying," Threx said, sounding almost offended. "My engineers spent decades on this problem, and your animal is winning by taking naps." "That is exactly how cats win everything," I told him. By day 90, Silo 4 was clear, not perfectly empty, because nothing in nature is ever perfectly anything, but stable, safe, and no longer a threat to the 60,000 Kaelthi who depended on it. Grain shipments resumed. The alarms stopped. For the first time since I had arrived on the station, I heard actual laughter in the corridors, instead of tense, worried voices. Threx requested a formal meeting, with the full Dominion Council, 2 days after the silo was declared secure. I stood beside him as he presented the results, watching a room full of powerful, ancient, technologically brilliant beings stare at a video feed of Whiskers, batting a piece of loose grain packaging across the floor, like it was the most important discovery in Dominion history, because in a very real sense, it was. The council approved an order for 400,000 cats to be placed across every affected colony in the Dominion. I tried to explain, gently, that Earth did not have 400,000 spare cats simply waiting in a warehouse somewhere for interstellar deployment, and that breeding programs took time, and that logistics on this scale would take years, not months. Threx cut me off before I finished, his 3 eyes calm and steady for the first time since I had met him. "Human," he said, "your world solved a disaster we could not solve in 11 centuries, using an animal you keep as a companion, not as a weapon. I do not care how long it takes. I care that it works." I did not have a good answer for that, mostly because he was right. Later that night, I sat in Silo 4, with Whiskers curled up beside me on a stack of grain sacks, both of us tired in the good way, the way that comes after a job well done, instead of a job merely survived. Around us, the Dominion station hummed quietly, safe for the first time in longer than most of its people could remember, and none of it had needed a single weapon, a single machine, or a single drop of blood. It just needed something small, patient, and completely unbothered by how impossible the problem was supposed to be.